Jess.
And I'm Marissa.
And welcome to the Apartment 6 podcast.
We're so happy to have you here.
We're going to start off this podcast by telling you why we're starting a podcast, first of all. Second of all, how we met. And third of all, why we're together in the first place. Because right now there's actually a quarantine, self-isolation, social distancing era happening due to the coronavirus or COVID-19. And so there's a reason why we're able to be together, and that's because we live together. So we're going to tell you a little bit about our friendship, why we decided to start a podcast. No, we aren't only starting the podcast because of quarantine. We actually have wanted to do this before we were stuck at home.
But having all this free time certainly doesn't hurt for the ability to start a podcast.
Do you want to start us off with how we met?
Oh, on a bright, fresh, crisp fall day in Boston, Massachusetts.
Right.
We decided of our own separate accords to audition for a cappella groups one day. And the audition process at Emerson is pretty extensive. It was like a weekend long, I would say, process of not only auditions themselves, but then multiple callbacks with like different groups and sometimes multiple per group. So the people who auditioned for a cappella groups got to spend a considerable amount of time together. So I can't remember which callback we met at.
It was the Troublemakers.
Right, okay. So ironically, we met at the callback that wasn't the group we ended up in.
Right. I didn't get into the Troublemakers, did you?
Nope.
Okay. If you had gotten in, though, do you think we would have landed in Acquired Taste?
I don't know.
We don't even have to keep this part in. But I thought that you did get in and I didn't.
No, I got a acapellas callback and I don't think you did.
Yes.
But I didn't get into any groups that you did.
That's funny. Shout out to all of those groups. If anyone from Emerson College who is currently in acapella are listening to this podcast, much love to all of you. We love all of the groups.
Yes, we do. Yeah, I don't think I can even answer the question of if I would have ended up in troubles. Not because I don't want to answer it because I feel bad for what my answer would be. I just genuinely don't know. Cuz it's so hard to think of any other outcome than what happened.
I agree. It is hard to think about ending up anywhere else.
Yeah.
But so I do you remember
I remember the most of the structure of the callback, but I don't remember the people.
Okay.
No offense. I know that we met at a callback for a group, but I didn't specifically remember it was that one. Because all I remember from the callback is the music, but not the people.
Do you remember meeting me though? Or do you remember being aware of me as a person?
No.
Okay, because I have a cuter version of this story.
Okay, great. You tell it then.
I remember standing outside of the cabaret, which is the name of the room. The performance
venue.
Space.
Yeah, space.
Yeah, it was the name of the performance space that we were auditioning for this group in. And I remember seeing Marissa. This is the story that I tell myself, but it's very possible that, you know how people will say oh, I knew they were the one the moment I met them.
What?
But it's maybe in the moment they didn't know, but because they ended up getting married, they're oh, I knew. Maybe in my head, I'm it was totally Marissa standing there, but maybe it wasn't even you. But in my head, I remember seeing a girl standing across the hall from me, and we were all looking at our sheet music, trying to remember it because they gave you so much time with your sheet music or something like that, where you had time to sort of get used to it. before they called you in and like officially gave it to you to learn and gave it to you to work on in small groups. To give you more background, this was Marissa and I's first like 2 weeks at college.
Right.
So everyone was starting to get a little cliquey. People were getting to know each other from auditioning for theater troupes or auditioning for or doing meetings with other clubs. People had roommates who were interested in the same thing, so that their roommates were going out for these groups with them. And I was alone because I didn't know anyone auditioning for a cappella. There were hundreds of people that did audition for it, but I didn't know anyone at this audition with me. And I remember seeing Marissa, and she was also alone. And we both were just kind of like...
The fact that I was alone really checks out, because I definitely didn't have anybody there with me.
So we were both looking at our sheet music, and I just remember seeing her and being like, we're going to be friends.
That's so nice.
I've told you this. I feel like it's been a long time since I've said this though.
Yeah.
But after, so we both got into our group Acquired Taste, and shout out to Acquired Taste.
And love an AT.
Love an AT forever. So we both got into Acquired Taste that same weekend.
Yes.
And had our first rehearsal probably a week later. And I remember instantly feeling like comfortable around everyone in the group, but I remember that her and I specifically felt comfortable around each other. Like, for example, we had like our first like a cappella party, and I remember one of us reached out to the other one. I think you reached out to me.
Yeah, I was just going to say that is, and this shows kind of how bad my memory is, but that is my first memory of you.
Mm-hmm.
My first memory of like our friendship isn't auditions or callbacks or anything, but I know logically that is where we met. My first memory of you is me asking you if we could travel to this party together, or like coordinate to meet up to go to the party together, which there must have been a connection before that if I was like at the place where I was willing to reach out and ask you. So there must have been moments before that were like friendship building moments, but that just happens to be the first one that I remember.
I think that it was because by the time that party came around, it was a Halloween party. No, it was our first, I think that was the end of September. And so we'd been in the group for a couple of weeks and maybe had like 1 or 2 rehearsals.
Yeah, I think it was like initiation, and I'm making air quotes because we don't really do any kind of like intense initiating stuff, but we still called it initiation.
Yeah, there's zero hazing.
Yeah.
It's literally just like a welcome party.
Yeah, exactly.
Then we call it initiation because like we want to feel cool, I guess. I don't really know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like we had been in the group and maybe had a couple of first rehearsals, and what we knew about each other was that there were, how many new people? 9?
Yeah, that sounds right.
And I think 3 of them were girls.
Yes.
And so we were 2 of 3 girls that were new out of 9 new people, and we were both sopranos, so we sang the same voice part. Also 2 freshmen. So it's like we just had a lot, like we were 2 of the newest people to the group, and we were singing the same voice part, and so it was very automatic for us to like talk to each other and be sitting near each other. And so I think that you probably reached out to me being like, this person's in the exact same boat I'm in. She's also never been to this party type of situation with this group, and is probably also wondering how she's going to get off campus, because all of our like parties were off campus because Emerson College, where we went to school, is right downtown, and it's a very vertical campus where there's only a few buildings, and there's no like on-campus apartments, and so you would travel like a half hour on the subway or the T.
Yeah, and at that point, like we both grew up pretty much around Boston, enough to have been there a few times before starting college, but we definitely weren't nearly as comfortable with the T system then as we are now. So I remember that being something I would really stress out about, especially with putting money on my card to reload it, because now we sign up for monthly passes and we don't worry about adding money every time. But I distinctly remember the stress of having plans off campus and worrying that I would need to add money to my card and that everyone would like need to wait for me and I would hold everyone back. So I think that's like one of the reasons that I always tried to find a buddy who was like at my level, because I was like, at least they'll wait for me if I need to put money on my card.
I was and have been multiple times the person who everyone is waiting for while they put money on their card. Yeah. So I know that feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was always such a process going off campus. And even just like getting into the right end of the T station, because there's the ones that are going outbound and inbound, and you have to like check yourself right before you get on it, where you're like, am I going the right way? And there's the multiple lines. So yes, it was a process.
And maybe all of this doesn't even apply to that first party, because I'm sure that upperclassmen would have like corralled us somehow in
we definitely met in LV.
Yeah, so that's kind of what's extra funny about me reaching out to you to like be buddies to go to this party, because like it's not like we were having to navigate anything by ourselves, but I still felt the need to have a buddy going into this party. Even though I wasn't going alone, like I was never going to be on my own or responsible for anything by myself, but I still felt the need to ask you to like coordinate with me to go there in a group.
Yeah, I definitely think that part of the conversation was you being like, can we agree to leave at the same time? I don't think it was just about getting there. I think it was about like, I remember there being like a conversation about like, oh, I don't really plan to drink that much. I'm not that we were underage drinking, but you know what? It's okay.
That's funny.
Well, it's not like people don't know. But I just remember there being sort of a conversation about like, oh, what do you think it's going to be like in terms of like alcohol, and like how late are people going to stay? Are we going to be able to take the tea home? At that point, the tea ran until like 2:30 in the morning.
Right.
But now it runs until only like 12:30.
Yeah.
So I think that there was like conversations about like, are you taking the tea home? Can we make sure we leave at the same time? Like if one of us wants to leave, can we go with each other? I think it was a sweet buddy system.
That makes sense.
Because I think we were both nervous. It was like our first college party, and it's funny looking back because we know these people so well now, and we
had nothing to be nervous about.
Yeah, and now we've experienced that party, so we know exactly what that party was like and could be like, wait, there was nothing to worry about.
Yeah.
But it's funny nonetheless that we were in cahoots from the very beginning. It was at the very get-go.
The very get-go of it all.
So that's how we met.
Yes.
I think that's really the whole story. I think that I had like this, so we made this joke about like having a kinship, because I joked with her. I was like, oh, like when I like saw you and you were all so alone, I just was like, like we're going to be friends. Like there's a kinship here. And I told her that when we like met in real life, because I also don't remember actually meeting you. I just remember I have this vague memory of seeing you and thinking like, she's on my level. Like we have the same energy. We were like very much like keeping to ourselves, just trying to learn our music.
Yeah, because I mean, no shade to my fellow Emerson College graduates, but Emerson is a place that tends to have a lot of big personalities and people who are very excited to express themselves. So especially freshman year, when people were in that environment for the first time, where they probably felt the most able to express themselves that they've ever felt in their lives, you can kind of picture the energy levels that were at these a cappella auditions with people like that. And I think that the vibe you were catching on was that I was not like that, and you weren't like that either.
Yeah. I also think that like I felt, in terms of my own singing abilities, I felt like I was good for my high school. I didn't feel that I was anything special at college, because at our school there are people who are literally majoring in, say, musical theater, and they are taking voice lessons as part of that major, and they're being graded on their vocal technique. And so I was very aware that for me, this was just sort of a fun thing, and that I didn't necessarily have any sort of talent that was unheard of around campus. I came from a little bit of like I was a little bit of a bigger fish in a smaller pond in high school, but not really. I think that there just were a lot of people who didn't sing rather than like people who were not good. I think a lot of people just didn't really like participate in that. And then there were like a decent amount of us who were like, yeah, we like to sing, or like we like to do theater, and singing is part of that and whatever. But I felt a little bit more special where I was coming from. I also, when you're younger, I feel like every year my self-confidence about my abilities to do things decreases.
Oh no.
So I now tend to think that I don't have a good voice because I don't know. I guess
so
like
sad.
Yeah, it is sad.
Well, do you think I feel like obviously your skill itself is not different than it was before, but it's more the audience that's different. Like in high school there were, assemblies and plays and theater performances and like opportunities to have an audience and be validated. And same in college, like we were in an a cappella group and we were singing every week with other people, so we always had an audience then too. So now that we're adults, it's our voices haven't changed. They're still the same voices, but our audience has changed in that we don't really have one anymore.
Yeah, like your audience is the internet if you choose to put it on the internet. Otherwise, no one's hearing you sing.
So you're not getting any validation.
Well, also, I haven't properly warmed up in 2 years. So I do tend to feel like my literal voice has like depreciated in value.
Yeah.
Because I haven't placed value in it in like 2 years.
Me
like,
too, yeah.
It hasn't been a point of, I haven't invested in my own voice in a long time.
Yeah.
And I think like the currency is like warming up, actively participating in vocal gigs or vocal situations, I guess. And I haven't participated in that at all. I haven't invested in that at all. So I do tend to feel like my literal voice has like lost some ability, but I do think that I could get back there. It's not that I lost it like for good, but that I think it was easier for me to randomly belt a song and have it sound good than back then than it would now.
But nothing will ever change the fact that you can sing.
I can sing.
Okay. Let's save some for the... I don't know if you're keeping this part in or not, but can I just tell everyone that Jess has broken multiple pieces of dinnerware / whatever you call it. Dishes. Broken multiple dishes in the household. And she has liked to blame it on the quarantine, but in fact she broke her first dish before this all started, so she can't blame it on the quarantine. But I bring it up because she just dropped something, and now I'm like conditioned to think that when I hear something drop, she's broken a dish.
So the reason I blame the quarantine for this is not because I literally think the quarantine has caused like a cosmic shift. I think you can't argue that it's caused a cosmic shift. Just kidding.
Not physically, but maybe emotionally.
But here's what the quarantine has done. It's given me more time at home, which means I have more time to be clumsy in my home and drop dishes as a result.
Fact.
So here's what I've done. I shattered a dish in my room. No, I shattered a cup in my room.
Like months ago? When was the first? When was the before quarantine one? 2020 at least? Like January?
Yes.
January? Okay.
Definitely 2020. We definitely had 6 glasses or so before me.
Each month we lose a glass.
I think I would probably say January or February. Probably.
Okay.
So I shattered that. Well, okay, so it landed in my slippers. So I didn't have slippers
Mm-hmm.
probably since January.
Mm-hmm.
So then 2 weekends ago, we have our coffee table in our living room is such that it has
2 levels?
2 levels. It has an underneath part and then the table part. And so I had my glass sitting on the underneath part and I went to pick it up and I accidentally smacked it against the table part, the under part of the table, if this makes sense. So it just like shattered down. Like it didn't shatter. Luckily, it didn't shatter. That's not true. It didn't shatter. Okay. It cracked.
Doesn't change the fact that we lost it.
Right.
Yeah.
So we lost it. We definitely lost it because it was dangerous. So it cracked. But safety reasons, it's important to announce that it didn't shatter.
No
so
glass
everything was
dispersed.
okay.
Correct.
No glass dispersed. So that was the other incident with the glass. The third thing, and I can't remember if this happened before or after the glass, but I want to say before that time that I just told you about. I was taking a plate out of somewhere and I hit it on something and I chipped a piece of the plate. But it was like, no one cares about that. Like, it didn't matter.
I care about it.
It didn't change how we use the plate.
It did change. No, just kidding.
So, I doubt you even have noticed the plate.
Oh, I've noticed. No, I haven't.
It actually creates like a little spot for your thumb on the edge of the plate to like hold if you're okay.
Are you eating like you're holding the plate under your chin?
No, like if you're like carrying your food to the other room. So then the other day, speaking of carrying food to my room, I washed and put some blueberries into a mini bowl. We have like some dip bowls for dip.
Or snacks if you want to try, as they say, portion controlling.
Right. My new thing is putting my snacks into these little bowls, but it's not to keep myself from eating more because I'll often bring the snack with me to then refill the bowl. It's more just I enjoy eating things out of tiny things.
I'm using it to try to ration my quarantine snacks.
Yeah, I'm not. So so I'll fill the bowl and then sometimes I'll leave the packaging in the kitchen. It's also a thing I don't like if I'm working to be like putting my hand into like a whole packaging of something. Like, you know when you're at the bottom of a bag of goldfish, it's like your whole wrist is going into the bag.
You should cut the bag.
Yeah, but then if I'm not at the very end and then I have to like seal it back up.
True.
The point is I like putting it in the small bowl. And so right now too, not only is packaging annoying, but it can be germy because the coronavirus can live on certain surfaces for multiple days. Go do your own research.
Yeah, we are not providers of coronavirus information.
If you haven't noticed, I'm not the CDC. Consult the CDC. Consult WHO? The World Health Organization.
Okay, let's get to how you broke up.
Okay, yeah, the point is... Oh, wait, I forgot I haven't told that part yet. Okay. So the other day, I washed and put some blueberries into a small bowl that's like the size of like a dip bowl. And
we've already established so much about the bowl.
It's so that if I edit that out,
the last 2 minutes. Okay.
If I ever repeat myself, it's for editing purposes.
Okay. But sometimes it's funny. Okay.
So the other day I washed some blueberries, put them in a small dip bowl, and then grabbed the bowl like claw style and walked to my room, and it immediately, before even leaving the kitchen, like it's not even fair to say that I was walking to my room because that makes it sound like I was almost there. Immediately the bowl drops on the ground, shatters the bowl, the blueberries go everywhere. I even found one like across the apartment, which was weird because it was the only blueberry I found across the apartment. I cleaned them all up, but like I'm not convinced that there aren't blueberries under our fridge. So then I immediately turned around and I was like, well, this doesn't change the fact that I should eat some fruit. So I immediately I grab the broom, I sweep up the blueberries, I like put the broken glass and the trash and whatever, and then I just like immediately washed more blueberries and like took out another one of the small bowls and like put them in there and was like, can you imagine if this happened? But this is not the first time or even the second time or the third time that I've like just dropped food everywhere. So we decided to start a podcast probably about a month ago. It was when we decided that we were going to commit to starting the process. Yeah. So about a month ago, we decided that we were actually going to commit to brainstorming ideas, looking into getting artwork drawn up.
Yeah, basically like putting brain power into it.
Right. And I say a month ago from right now as we're recording this. I don't know when you're hearing this recording. Probably like 2 weeks from when we're recording this. So
a little over a month ago.
Yeah, a little into, 2020, we decided we were going to shoot our shot. And something that I think is funny about this is that we started talking about the podcast as an actual podcast more recently. However, we've had this idea of a podcast sort of dancing around for like over a year and a half, because while we never actually talked about like, oh, we want to host a podcast together, or, oh, we want to have a podcast called this or about this, we've always both enjoyed podcasts as a medium. We both have multiple podcasts that we like regularly listen to. And when we graduated from college in 2018, we both moved back to our respective homes, which are, I'm in the North Shore of Massachusetts, she's in the South Shore. And we had been used to living together. We had lived together in dorms, and then we lived together in a crappy basement apartment our senior year of college. And now we were going to be working and not really on the same schedule, not living together. And so when it came to like telling each other things and like catching up on stories, we weren't like apt to like pick up the phone, because I was actually working weekends and she was working like a regular 9 to 5 or 8 to 4.
And I would say even regardless of the scheduling part of it, we are not generally people who love the medium of phone calls anyway. So it didn't really feel that natural for us to talk on the phone, because we just never really did, and we don't really do that a lot with other friends. So it just wasn't something that felt that natural to us.
We found that instead we liked recording voice memos and being like, hey, like, here's what was on my mind, or like, here's what's happening in my life that's bothering me, or here's how things are going with that guy I'm seeing, or, here's my mental health check-in. And so we would always like record either stories for each other or be like, oh, I wanted to ask you this and forgot about it. So like now I'm talking about it in this voice memo. And we would, instead of saying like we're sending each other voice memos, we used to joke that it was our podcast, because even though it wasn't happening simultaneously in real time, it was like my chance to speak everything on my mind and like ask her questions and then kick it to her, and then her chance to like listen to that in her car, record as she's like going about her day. So we recorded a lot of things like in our cars, like where you can hear like honking in the background, and we're like, oh, sorry, like this person is being a jerk. And yeah, so we have all these recordings from like September 2018 until we moved into this apartment that we're in right now together. So we haven't said that. So we live together. Did I say that?
It seems strange to think that we didn't say that, but it's possible we didn't.
So we live together. We moved into an apartment in Boston in September of 2019, a year after we moved out of our college apartment. So we both spent a whole year in our respective homes post-graduation, and then we moved back to Boston, and now we're about 8 months into a lease that we're going to have for 2 years. So, yeah, so we live together. And basically from the time we moved home in September of 2018 through moving back, we sent each other voice memos. It's always been this like medium that we've leaned on, and we've always joked that it's our podcast because we talk about a lot of the good, real stuff, I guess.
I think the coolest thing about those voice memos was that they often were very real time takes of things. So instead of me, say, going on a date and saying, like, can we have a video chat or a phone call about this date? I want to talk to you. And then, like, arranging that and waiting until like the next day or whatever to have that conversation. I would literally hop in the car after the date, press record on my phone, and give her my exact live take. So that was one of the coolest things about that. That it's not likely that you could do that if you were on the phone unless someone was available all the time for a phone call no matter what.
Right, I guess that's what I mean in terms of, like, it could be energy depleting to call each other. Because, like,
Yeah.
if you had called me at 10 o'clock at night, like, I would have picked up. I'm a night owl, and I would be like, yeah, like, let's chat. I don't mind it.
But conversely, I wouldn't have picked
Right.
up at 10 o'clock at night because I'm an early nighter.
You're a morning person?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and you're more introverted than I am, so you're introverted. And so
It's
like,
harder for me to be spontaneously down for a conversation unless it's an emergency.
right. And so it is easier that you could send it to me and then I can just be like, oh, I'm really tired. Like, I'll listen in the morning and respond. But either way, it's like as soon as you were ready to talk about something, you got to get it out. And yeah, so there are recordings. I had to unfortunately delete them off of my phone and off like in my
I think I
my
still have
storage.
all of them.
You probably do.
I don't remember deleting anything.
I have terrible storage on my phone, so I had to delete all of them because a lot of them were like a half hour long. But there are recordings of me leaving a situation and crying and being like, oh my gosh, I don't even know why I'm crying. I wasn't crying when I started recording this. And there are recordings of like me feeling frustrated and being like, I don't like how this feels, or I blah blah blah. So
yeah, pretty much every emotion was covered in that year through podcasts. But that is very different than what this is, which is us sitting down next to each other at a certain time we agree on and actually recording something. But that is how this sort of like entered our brains, just sort of the word podcast and what it meant to us.
The reason we started this podcast, though, is because we feel like we have really fun, interesting, vulnerable, introspective conversations regularly. And we always would joke like, man, like we should be recording these because like we might like to listen back to them. So making this podcast isn't us thinking that tons of people are going to listen to it or care about our lives or anything like that. It's for us, first of all. And if our friends want to listen and think it's interesting to hear their friends talk,
yeah,
or think it's like comforting, then like that's good. Like I would love to hear my friends talk just because it's another way to get to know them even deeper. But it's really supposed to be a creative outlet for us because we feel like we're always sort of sitting down on our couch and breaking things down depending on what's going on in our lives. And we talk about a lot of interesting things from the comfort of our couch in apartment 6 that are, family related, that are mental health related, job related, just like growing pains stuff. And we just felt like if we could sit down and from the perspective of 2 college best friends turned adult roommates talk about life.
Yeah, this is perhaps a weird analogy, but I remember when I was younger, I read a lot of teen magazines. Like I would read 17 and, J14, Tiger Beat, GL, Girls Life, all those things when I was younger. And I loved reading magazines. But then I got to like college age, like young adult age, older in my teens, and I kind of struggled with finding a magazine that felt at my level because the magazines that were for adult women were either like intensely focused on fashion or actually that's pretty much it. Like you can, or like cooking, like then you get more into like family magazines and lifestyle and stuff. So stay with me here. I feel like this podcast is sort of that niche in podcast form where it's just like for the everyday person in their 20s, our age, who just wants to hear about real life stuff, normal stuff that everyone's thinking about, but just at a comfortable, approachable way. Yeah, instead of being too polished, I guess.
Right. Like, we are not influencers. We're not
trying to be experts on anything.
Yeah, we're not experts on anything.
Yeah.
So we can't even try to be or pretend to be. We're just, very normal young women dealing with very normal things.
Yeah, and in the way that I felt like it was hard to find a magazine for me as a normal woman, I feel like it is kind of hard to find
as a normal woman.
I know that made it I feel marginalized as a normal woman. It's so tough to be a normal woman these days. No, but as I struggled to find a magazine for the quote unquote normal woman who just wanted to kind of didn't want to, live in this high fashion world or cook the most amazing cake or whatever. I just wanted to be normal and read about normal things. I feel like it's kind of hard in the same vein to find a podcast like that that's just on an everyday comfortable level, that's not trying to better anybody's anything. We're not trying to inform people, we're not trying to change people, better people. We're just trying to sit here and chat and hope that you enjoy hearing what we have to say.
Yeah, I would say that if we're trying to do anything, it's just resonate with you.
Yeah.
We're just trying to feel approachable and relatable, because I think that we are. I think that we're like a lot of people, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that we're not special. Like, we're special to us. You're special to me. We're special to our parents. We're special we are special, unique people. Everyone is. But you get the point. I'm gonna wither away into nothing now.
Okay.
But yeah, so what you can expect from this is,
to be fair, I don't know how much you're going to leave in, but you can probably expect a lot of what happened a few times today, which is that we're talking about one thing and then we randomly get off into talking about something completely different, but it's usually funny to us, so we hope it's funny to you too.
What you can expect from us in terms of the format of the podcast is that we plan to tackle a different subject or two every single episode of the podcast. And so, for this week, we wanted to tackle how we met, why we're together, why we're making this podcast, and
our origin story.
Yeah, just tell you a little bit about our friendship and what we're hoping to do with this podcast. But in the coming weeks, everything will be
a little more structured.
Yes, a little more structured.
As much as we can, because again, we might end up getting off on some tangents.
Right. And we're also still playing with things like audio and, just trying to make this a great listening experience while still learning how to play with this medium. And we also are, balling on a budget. That's sort of what I mean when I say that we're very normal people. We don't have some sort of production studio. We're sitting in our apartment right now, but that's the point of the podcast. So welcome to apartment 6.
So we hope you enjoyed this little origin story of our friendship and why we're here in the first place. And hopefully it was nice enough to listen to that you choose to stick around and check out some of our future episodes.